We're going live.
We're live.
We're live.
All right. Today is Thursday, October 31st. For some of us in the world, for everybody that's Halloween, happy Halloween. For everybody anywhere else in the world that doesn't have Halloween, or if it's the 32nd, whatever day it is in Australia, happy November 1st. This meeting is to check in on active development tasks for Backdrop CMS. We have a handful of updates to current issues, but before we get that, I did want to announce that the Project Management Committee has had an official vote on the end of life date for Backdrop 1, and that's going to be at the very least January 15th, 2023. So that will give everybody who's moving off of Drupal 7 2 years to get onto Backdrop 1 before they need to worry about an upgrade to Backdrop 2. That information has been posted on the roadmap page, and I believe our plan is to write a blog post about that too, so that anyone who needs to figure out what PMC is doing lately for Backdrop will have announcement sections on the news part of our site to find them.
Isn't the end of life of Drupal 7, isn't it November 2021?
Yes. So if you add 2 years to that and then go to Backdrop's release schedule, our releases are going to be on January 15th. So that's the next Backdrop release that's 2 years after the end of life of Drupal 7.
Yeah, and that's a proposed date. Like it could be further than that.
It could be farther in the future than that, but it will not be closer.
It won't be sooner than that, yes.
But shouldn't it be then January 2024?
Why?
I see.
Birthday.
2021, end of 2021?
Because we had it wrong.
Yeah, because we don't have a release in November. We have a release in January. You're right.
Yeah. So should we take that back to the PMC for a math fix, just to confirm?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and also also decide on what that means for security support. Will those who decide to stay in Backdrop 1.x receive security releases? Will it be a long-term support?
You mean after that date?
After that date.
Yeah, I think we should come up with some clear language around that too.
Yes.
Maybe we'll do a follow-up issue for security language. But get this one done first. Okay.
Yep, sure.
Sounds good.
Things to discuss.
I think I mentioned this last week, but just in case I didn't, I wanted to welcome Bob Christensen as a new contributed module author. He's offered to port Vue's selective filters, but I wanted to make sure that we got that thank you out there. And then after that, we had a couple of things we were talking about in the outreach meeting related to backdropcms.org. So if you're curious about what we're doing there, I will say to watch the video for the outreach meeting, but they're mostly related to getting people to sign up for our newsletter in a way that we are legally allowed to email them. But also there's some other great content changes that happened recently. Olaf, I know you're not always in this meeting. I don't know if you have anything you want to add about the translation site, but if you do, now's the time.
Gregory suggested that we discuss one thing, but I guess maybe later.
Yes,
about
Olaf is here after invitation. So I have an idea. Olaf mentioned in previous meetings that there is a problem because of our UX improvements and because we see user experience flaws as bugs and we introduce text changes very often, it makes it harder for the translators. So I have an idea that would sort of make happy everybody, developers, translators, and end users. But I'm not sure if it's a little bit of work.
What is it?
Should I say it now? So since we started discussing it, okay. So we rely on PO files, all right? And these PO files rely on a string, a specific string. And then its translation for each string relies on that string. So even if you add a dot there, or even some punctuation that might be necessary for readability, it means that translators have to do that all over again. So I was thinking that the T function now accepts a string, and then it accepts optionally an array which holds placeholders within that string. And I would like to propose another a third parameter there, which is an API addition, not an API, an optional parameter, which would hold an ID. So I know that there's some translations that have a numeric ID instead of having the literal thing. I can't remember if it's not PODX, it's called something else. I need to find out the specification of that. But my idea was that we keep the current mechanisms that rely on PO files, but developers and us slowly can add a third parameter in the T functions that are actually a numeric ID.
Wait, so we have to rewrite all T functions in core?
Slowly. So it's gonna be optional. See, that's why I said it's gonna be some resistance. But what that gains us is that we have the freedom to change the strings whenever we want without upsetting the translators, because each time that this happens and they complain, like even in modules, slowly, we'll just add an ID there, which can be, I haven't figured out everything, how long that will be. Should it be a UUID? That seems too much for me. But the thing is that the current mechanisms will have the PL files as source of truth when they're doing the imports and the exports. And if they don't find those strings that they need to be translated, they might fall back to those IDs.
So every string will have a previous version and a current version translation. And then if it can't find a match for the current version, it would, how does it know which one is the previous one?
No, it won't be versions. So now that we have pairs of the English version and whatever other language version.
Right.
What I'm adding to and the English version is the source of truth, like the origin of what needs to be translated. I'm saying that if the origin of what needs to be translated is not found because we changed something, then if the T function includes an ID, then we fall back to whatever that ID is, and translators can translate.
I see. So every instance of a string would have, rather than using the English version as the key, it would be an identifier as a key. Oh, crazy.
Yes. That's why I wanted to discuss it.
So how would that work if we actually changed the text? Like, for example, this description text change, right? Like we have a string translation for description. So everywhere in core description is used, which is probably hundreds of places, we use one translation. We're now changing that to something completely different, like file name. We don't want description to be translated as file name, right? We want the file name translation that exists everywhere else in core to be used instead.
Yes, so
would we use a key that matches file name instead and change the key when we change the text?
Yeah, so the good thing with that is that we can go in each instance where the word description is being translated via T currently, and assign the same ID, which will be numeric this time. If we don't do it, the current system of using PO files and whatever it is, this translation will take effect so long as we don't change that string.
Right.
But there would be a second set. I haven't decided if, and I need to check the PO specifications. Can we include that in PO files, or will it have to be an additional file, which adds a burden? But as I said, this will be an additional step. And each time that people complain, we say, okay, yeah, let's add an ID there. Let's add an ID here. So this iteratively at some point will reach a point where we have the old system, which will still keep in place, and that will be how we do things, the simple thing that everybody knows, and there's documentation about it. But we will also have this optional thing which doesn't break the API. It's an addition, and it sort of like solves the problem.
I also really like that this gets away from using English as the like canonical source. I feel like it's a little bit more fair that way. And
yes.
If we have anything really weird that happens in English that doesn't happen in other languages, we won't be trying to like work around that. We'll just pull the like correct language for the or whatever that should be.
Yeah, so this idea comes from my work on a translation of a piece of software that was proprietary back in the days, and they used IDs instead. So they didn't use PO files, they used, I need to find what it was called. So it was a different system, a different spec. What makes it harder, and that's why I said we need to keep everybody happy. Users will be kept happy because the translations will be more resilient, as to say, in changes. Translators, eventually, they will have to do a little bit more work gradually, It doesn't have to translate everything now, but as they see things that are missing, they can add that ID, and that becomes future proof because it uses the ID. Now, the thing is with developers, if we did what you just mentioned now, like change the source of truth to be an ID within code, we would write, for example, the description of the element description equals 1, 2, 3, 4, 0, something. What that's not friendly for developers, and they will start nagging. With this solution, which is a hybrid, we still get to keep T and the English string there, which can be updated or not, but it will be T, string to be translated, optional array, optional ID. So yeah, I would like to explore that option. I'm not sure if there's going to be any roadblocks. It's just an idea that I had, and then it would make Olaf happy as well, not upset him each time that we change things.
Right now, the T function takes the English string, an array of arguments for string substitutions, and then an array of options. And so now it would have a fourth parameter that would be some kind of unique identifier. I think the concern, I don't know. I mean, I feel like you mentioned
we can make the new identifier be one of the options. Actually. I wasn't aware because I didn't see the spec in the API thing. I just found out about options now that you mentioned it. I never used it before, but it says language context. We can add another one that says translation ID.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Yeah, the context exists because in theory you could have one word mean different things. And so you could actually translate it according to different contexts. It's very rarely used though.
Yes. And the IDs might be rarely used until they are needed. Yeah. So there will be sort of like a workaround or a fallback. Many people might not know about it until it sort of like gets documented and popular, I guess.
Yeah, interesting.
Okay, cool.
Okay, I like it. I'm coming around to this. What is left in terms of the PO file research? Do we have an issue for this yet?
We don't. That's why I wanted to bring it up. I know that Olaf, maybe some of the things that we discussed is too technical for you, but I needed technical sort of like direction from the people that understand what's going to happen in code. The thing that you need to know is that we have the potential to now make the translations more resilient, even if the string changes. With a little bit of more work, we can make the translations be more resilient, so it doesn't upset translators in general.
Gregory, it might be a good idea, like when we first introduce this, to grab like the most commonly used strings in core and give them IDs. So things like configure, edit, like really obvious things. And that way we would have a good like basis to use as a test case. And then we could write tests that were like, change the string edit to like something else.
Yeah. So one technical problem, one technical challenge, I would say, that comes with that. And the reason, it's funny what triggered this whole thing. So the moment that we added the label for needs translation update, this started being at the back of my head all the time. And I was thinking of Olaf because I really want to join the multilingual team. Having English as a second language, I really want to translate things to Greek. So it's a back project for me. So interestingly, someone mentioned something in the forum about adding additional MIME types for media. And then I created issue 4177. And I noticed that each time that we want to add a new MIME type, we have an array which has numbers like, and these go from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then it goes to 350. And that happened because we still needed to keep the values alphabetical, but the array already had reached 349. So this is the problem, the same problem that we'll face with those IDs. The challenge is, how do we know, like if these are incremented, how do we know what's the last one? And if you have multiple pull requests that in core that include IDs, it's the same problem that we have with update hooks. So if you have 3 PRs for the same release that target the same install file, and they all need update hooks, they will go to the next one, but they will all have the same thing. So the one that gets committed first wins, and then the other ones need to update there. So it will be the same thing.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'll figure out the specifics. I'll put down an issue with points like action points and decision points that we need to make. And at some point, I would like to have a crack at it.
I also wonder like how many strings we're gonna have if like maybe integers aren't going to be sufficient.
Yes.
So
yes,
there are about 8,000, I think.
In core.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have contributors.
I'm not sure, but.
Yeah, look, with integers, what we can do is like, because this doesn't have to be, like we can be adding digits. We can make it, like if it's an integer.
Just add like 8 zeros.
Yes, you add zeros and that's it. But yeah, my initial thought was UUIDs, but UUIDs are like, they will, even in code, when we add that as a parameter, it will take a lot of space. It will make it be outside the 80 character limit. So I thought, yeah, maybe something shorter and safer. Like if we have 9,000 strings at this moment, it will be safe to go to 100,000, I guess, like 6 digit, which takes us up to 999,099.
Yeah.
999, yeah.
Well, I hope that one day we have so many contrib modules that we need to bump our numbers.
Okay, but as I said, because it's an integer, we can just add zeros or digits at the end. It would still not mess it up. So if PO files allow you to have multiple sort of like origins, like have both a string and a number for origin, it would be perfect. But I don't think it will allow it. So yeah, implementation wise, it might be a little bit tricky, but I'm prepared to just do something for that, because I don't want to stop updating, like, or losing the ability, or I don't want to scare people that are interested, like in UX, have another thing to think about, like, oh, maybe I shouldn't change that because it's going to upset the translators. If something needs to be updated to make more sense, it should. It's a UX bug and it should be fixed, even if it's just punctuation. Sometimes it makes a difference. Oftentimes.
Yeah, so nice idea, I think.
Yep.
Yeah, especially because now we have only translation releases for every minor release and not for the bug fix releases. That's a particular problem. So yeah.
Yep.
Sounds good.
Yep, cool.
We could also, if it becomes too much of a problem, Gregory, you're not going to like this. We could look at usability updates that change strings and push those only to minor releases too. And then that way we would have like.
Yeah, I don't like it. You're right. I don't like it.
Just going to throw that out there. I don't think we should like wait till Backdrop 2 for something like that. But we'll see. If we can't figure out another solution, it is an option.
Exactly. But I respect the fact that I may not like holding back those changes, but then people like Olaf and whoever, because Olaf represents a lot of people that are actually doing the translations, and I don't want to discourage them if they say, oh, this is too much work. It's time that they have a release, it breaks things.
Yeah.
So it was sort of like I was trying to please everybody, and I was also trying to keep in mind the developer aspect of it. This is why I didn't say UUIDs. Because I know that if we used UUIDs, it would be sort of like messy in the code. Yeah. So yeah, we'll figure it out. We have a good brainstorming team. So yeah, I'm confident.
All right.
Nice. Yeah.
Interesting. Cool. Okay.
After hijacking the normal flow of the meetings, back to you again. I'll add this to the end.
Okay, well, next is update on Backdrop core issues. Nate, I heard your voice. I'm not sure if you're around right now.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, your camera's off.
Yeah, I'm not in a good camera position today, so I've got the Dell that has the nose cam, and so I don't like turning it on.
All right. Okay, well, let's turn it over to you to talk about other stuff.
Okay. Yeah, I was doing research on PO files. I was like,
yes, excellent. I just saw that.
Yeah,
that's encouraging.
Seems possible. Yeah, that's going to be interesting to work through. I think I've heard this proposed dozens of times actually over the years in Drupal by lots of different people, but there's always been a lot of pushback of like either that's too hard or that's a lot of work. And so,
Yeah.
but I like this approach that it's kind of like a halfway, like, and it has a transition. Anyway, sorry. I'll do what you asked me to do, which is talk about Backdrop and what we're working on right now. Okay, so 114.2 is the next bug fix release, of which I was going through today prior to the beginning of the meeting and going through the RTBC issues. We've got another 5 or so of those merged in, little fixes here and there, and bumped a couple of them back to needs work. The items, we don't have any items that we've pulled out as being things to mention during the meeting, other than these 2 big meta issues. One for views crossports, issue 3685. That is for crossporting all updates to the views module over to Backdrop. We're currently on crossporting items from views 3.12. There's only 2 issues remaining in there, and then we're ready to start crossporting views 3.13. So that's just kind of, as we get time, like that would be a good task for anybody to pick up. It's usually fairly straightforward porting those things over because our code compatibility is still very strong, even though it's out of date. So the objective is to get it not out of date with 777 and make it much more, actually increase the similarities between the 2. Let's see, we also have an issue for flexible templates. Follow-up issues, another big meta at 4046. I haven't seen any of these in particular that have had any activity yet. Do you guys have anything that is related to flexible templates that has seen any motion that's worth discussing?
Not worth discussing. It's just that I thought I was being blocked. I knew that there was a workaround. So the issue that I was working on was the one that will be adding automatic icons to flexible layouts. It's time that we changed it. I was stuck because the issue that came up during QA, during testing, was that they wouldn't update. It worked on my local because I had disabled log caching, but it wouldn't work on the sandbox. So then I got myself into a rabbit hole of adding tokens into images, like cache tokens at the end. But we can work around that by randomizing the names for now.
Right. Yeah, that would definitely work. Or or even like taking a hash or something like that of like the configuration, so that when the config changes, it makes a new hash type thing. That would work.
So I try to do a global solution, as in what Drupal 8, I think at least does, and add a token at the end as a query, URL query thing, a path query. And this would solve the problem with many other things, because it would not cache those things. It will make them unique. But that may need to wait until 1.15 if it gets approved. Whereas if I just randomize the name itself, it would solve the problem immediately, but we can revisit.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
So that's almost done. I just need to fix this bit. Like, instead of adding the randomized, I did it based on file creation time. So instead of adding it in a query, I'm going to add it in the file name, and that's it. So that's ready for review after that. It's just I didn't have to time to work on it.
Okay, great. Let's see, any other 114.2 items? There's, looking at the milestone, there's currently 49 issues that are tagged for that, a lot of which are in needs review, which is fantastic. Do you guys have any that you would like to bring up as being like interesting or of note, or something that needs discussion?
I have one issue of personal interest. It's issue 4158. And I've made a pull request. It's about when I add an alt or a title attribute to an image, a part of the text gets stripped when there's a colon in the string. And we had a similar problem with image captions a while ago. And now it turns out that's also in the title attribute. And I would like some feedback to the PR, because it changes security related code. So, and I can't evaluate if it's dangerous what I'm doing there, if it's the correct approach.
Huh, very fascinating. A colon. Who would have thought that would cause a problem?
Yeah, because it's seen as part of a protocol like HTTP or JavaScript colon.
Yeah, it looks like they're...
Yeah, it's very encouraging that D8 has fixed it and the D7 thing is fixed already. Did you base the pull request off of what was done for D7?
It's based on the backdrop fix for 1201, I think. So when we had the problem with the image captions, it's a fix of Nate. And yeah, I've made it because the D7 patch is many more complex, and I don't know why.
It is.
So
it is. I have to dig. I promise I will get to that eventually as well. I've added it in one of my favorite things to review. So
okay, thank you very much.
Thanks for that. Don't thank me yet because, as I said, I'm really swamped for the next 3 weeks. But I'll try to find time. Backdrop is fun for me, so there's high chances. Thanks.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a really fascinating issue. Yeah, that is encouraging though, that it's been fixed in 8 and it is RTBC for Drupal 7. So it's not fixed in Drupal 7 yet, but it looks like it'd be pretty safe to take that same approach.
Yeah, we've done that already for other. I didn't check how long it's been RTBC for, but if it's been RTBC'd by multiple people and it's been tested for quite some time, it's relatively safer. Like it encourages confidence, I guess.
However, my current approach is much more simple than the D7 one.
I saw it. It's just one line.
Maybe, yeah, maybe it's. I hope it's better. So I don't know.
Yeah, let's see.
Okay, awesome. I'll see if I can make time to take a look at that. Oh yeah, yours is. Oh, interesting.
Just a single line of code.
Yeah.
You've been doing a lot of effort. This is how you fix it.
Yeah,
and then we can claim. And then we can claim because Backdrop is so simple.
It might be worth taking that patch and putting it back in the Drupal 7 issue and seeing what people say. That's a good way to solicit feedback to figure out why they're doing something different than we are. It also would be good to take the Drupal 7 patch has some test editions. Like we should take those and apply those to your approach just to make sure that you get the same result.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Let's see, that was issue 4158, just for reference. Okay, so 115, we'll move on to the next minor version of Backdrop that will be coming out January 15th, 2020, with feature freeze on January 1st or thereabout. Again, seems like our feature freeze always manages to land on a holiday. So that usually means that we push it to the next day, but we'll see as that approaches. Let's see. So the first item that we've got here is issue 4031. Move the contents of the managed file display page. This is related to the file entity functionality that went into 114. Jen, you are the advocate for this. You want to give us an update?
Yeah, so I got really excited about this yesterday because I got reminded about field settings forms from some other issues. I think it was about node title settings. And so I started working on the way that these forms are built. And right now, there's a whole bunch of different loops that happen in order to build all of the different elements on the form. And so I sort of threw them all out and wrote one, tried to redo the whole thing. And it's looking okay. But none of the, not none of the tests are passing. Tests aren't passing. Not all of the tests are passing. So I'm not sure I've got everything that it used to do before back in there. But I do think that we're making progress on getting fields on pseudo elements. And I'd like to get that. And I'm not entirely sure whether that should go in with this issue or whether that should go in as a separate issue. I noticed there was another issue in the queue that was just about adding fields to pseudo, adding settings to pseudo fields. But I thought we should probably do it with something that's using it rather than on its own, just that we have an actual use of it in core. We do have a bunch of issues that require, like the title settings is the simplest example. This file field thing is a much more complicated example, but we have a bunch of places where we're going to use it. So I'm working on it here. We'll see if we think this is a good enough place to put it in with, but progress anyway.
Okay. Anything else?
Nope, not on that issue.
Okay. Yeah, it could go either way. It just depends on complexity, but I think you're on the same page there. It's like if it turns out to get really gnarly, then separate them.
Okay.
Let's see. Next item that we've got here is add an image library modal to image fields, issue 3297. Lauren is not on the call today, but this has been seeing a lot of activity this past week. Let's see. Graham's been involved. Jen, you posted a comment or two. Do you have any? Could you summarize this? It looks like yeah, that was 3 days ago that you posted a comment, but there's been more things.
We're running into this issue where this is the same thing where we have alt and title fields on fields, and we have now a possible alt and title field on files. And so we're trying to figure out how to handle the population of the alt and title fields. So if you have a title field on your file, should that fill the title field on your field when you put the image, when you put the file in the field?
Interesting. Yeah, it seems like that this could be a follow-up though, as opposed to like this is just the initial passes adding a browser, you know, adding the modal to image fields. It seems like that could be done separately.
Yeah. It's just, I think right now, I don't know that, yeah, I don't know. It was just a question that came up, so.
Yeah, it looks like also, have you, I haven't tried this out yet, but looking at the screenshot, it looks like the browser happens on the page instead of in a modal. Is that right?
It was the case. I don't know, but he looks like there's a new pull request just 2 hours ago. So I don't know.
I haven't looked at that one.
Yeah, I haven't looked at the most recent one, but it wasn't in a modal as of a week ago.
It was or was not?
It was not.
Okay. Okay, so there's so much activity there. We don't know what's going on because it's changing faster than we can look at it, which I guess is, you know, not a bad place to be. So the status overall, I'll just say lots of progress. That's great to see that one moving forward. That's probably, like, some of these other things get a little esoteric, and that's a very, very direct improvement for editors and authors. So that's a great one. Let's see. Next up is auto menu settings in core, issue 1610. Would make it so that you could automatically place items in menus as content is created. BW Panda is the advocate for that. He's in the meeting. Could you give us an update?
Yeah. So Jen's written a new pull request for this, which took out some more advanced functionality, and we'll leave that for the contrib module that already exists. And in core, we'll just go the basic functionality of just ticking that box to make pages added to the menu by default. I did a quick test just an hour ago, and it seems to work. Testing is needed, and once it's tested, then it should be good to go, I think.
Okay, that's great.
You're typing, Nate, is so loud.
Yes.
We can't hear other people talking.
I'm so sorry. I'm just trying to type what people are saying into the notes, but I know I've been told my typing, yeah, the microphone and the laptop keyboard.
Let us
Okay.
let us do the typing for you.
Okay.
But Jen, I need access to the agenda. I don't have.
What? You don't have edit access on the agenda?
I don't know why. Maybe it's because I use the other, not the Kronos, but the other address.
Okay, let's see.
Yeah.
Well, you guys sort that out quietly,
Yes.
and we'll
Yes.
move on to the next one, which is the recent news block in the dashboard, issue 3566. Tim, you're the advocate for this one. Oh, it says here no status update since last week. Is that the case? Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Great. I'll just keep rolling then. Provide a way to re-enable disabled text formats, issue 1575. Gregory, you're the advocate for it, but it says here no status update since last week.
Yes, as I said, maybe we'll change the no update, but also add the fact that we are pretty close. A better solution has been provided by Doc Wilmer, and we just need to implement it. Like, it's really close. We just need to implement it in a way that is less prone to affecting other bits of the user interface and functionality.
Okay. Yeah, I recall the last change that I did really threw a wrench in things. So
Yes.
I'm happy to. Yes, I'm happy to see you guys go bad idea and just take that back. So
Okay.
let's see. All right, next up we've got issue 1992. Digital signatures on packages. This one's my issue that I'm the advocate for. So I did make some progress. I moved CodeSign into its own contrib repository, and so it is now there along with its submodules, CodeSign GPG and CodeSign OpenSSL. So different alternatives to signing the packages. I also did some minor code updates to fixing the API. And as I get into it and I'm actually trying it out, I'm running into a number of things. So I've started using the issue tracker in that contrib module to start tracking things that potentially need to be fixed. The funny thing is, after testing it out and putting it all together, like trying to make it easier to test, I realized that I don't really quite know how to actually get it doing something. So that's going to take me a little bit of work investigating it. But one of those issues I filed is add documentation, because like we need to be able to have, lots of people testing this in order for it to be effective and approved. So still, it's encouraging to move forward on that. I also found out that GPG wasn't installed on my local host, which immediately makes me suspicious about using that as a viable signing option if it's not usually installed. But I think OpenSSL was the one that we've kind of been saying that's the most widely available one anyway. So
Yeah.
anyway, it's very interesting. I'm having kind of some fun diving into that. So I can't really tell people how to try it all out yet, though. It's in project module and it's in the CodeSign repository now. You can clone both of them locally and start playing around. But because there's almost no documentation whatsoever, it's kind of a learn on your own exercise currently. Which I'd like to get it out of that stage. So that's what I've got for that one. Definitely some movement though, which has been nice to finally be able to put some time in. Let's see, next up, Entity Cache and Core issue number 74. Joseph is our advocate for that. And Joseph, you're here in the meeting. Do you have any updates you'd like to report?
No, I still need a code review.
That's a very worthwhile report to say. Still needs code review. Okay. Great. Well, that does it for the summary then of items for 115. Do you guys have any other items that you would like to bring up in the 115 milestone? I don't think I see any other ones in the list here, but do you guys have anything else?
I have one, but not for 115 necessarily. It's by Alan 4174. This is about specifically allowing, it falls into the D8 parity realm of issues, but we have a larger issue than that, which says that certain things should be allowed to be overwritten in settings PHP, which is that other issue is. Bear with me.
Oh, is this like config overriding in settings.php?
Yes,
Yeah.
which the base issue is an older one, a much older one, is 2805. So if we turn that older issue into a meta, you would say that 4174 is a child issue of that. I guess that people coming from Drupal land, especially developers, expect this sort of functionality to work out of the box, and it doesn't currently.
Yeah.
Just the ability to override any variable in settings.php with the 7. We ran into this a while ago in Backdrop, and we're like, not possible. But everybody keeps going, I really want it. And we're like, okay, we need to figure out how to make it possible.
Yeah, it is possible in Drupal 8 to do that for config files, although it acts a little bit weird. But yeah, it would be possible with the right syntax, which Drupal 8 syntax for overriding config is actually just fine, where it's just a more deeply nested array than the single level variables override that we had in Drupal 7 and that we have for settings in Backdrop.
In 2805, Herb provided a pull request with a proof of concept, and I really like the user interface. So if a setting is overwritten in via the settings PHP thing, it just locks the element in the UI if we offer such an option, and it says this is being overwritten.
Does that only work if we have that special, I can't remember quite what it's called, like pound config file or pound config name or something like that? Is it tied to that?
It's been a long time. So last it was updated back in April, and I haven't taken a look at the actual pull request, so I can't remember how it's implemented. I'm just there's a screenshot in that issue, and I like the UI implementation of it.
What's the number one more time?
2805, and if you scroll to 24th of April, you'll see one of Herb Dool's comments saying that he's updated the proof of concept, and he has a screenshot there.
Cool. That's very cool.
Yeah.
Having trouble finding the screenshot, but I'm sure it's in here somewhere. You said it's at the end?
No, not at the end. 24th of April. Look at the dates. 20.
Oh, okay. There it is.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll look at this later. But this is a great issue, though, and could be, viable for 115 for sure. I mean, we've got a ways away yet. It'd be great to get an advocate on it, and then we can start bringing it up regularly.
Yeah. So either decide to implement it for a specific set of values that was also possible to override, same as D7, or do it globally for any config value, which I prefer the second, like not making any exceptions or maintaining a list of things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, this is a good candidate.
Another thing, Gregory, didn't Doc Wilmot mention something in GitHub which he wanted
Yes, it's
that
in
we talked about?
it's in the list in the discussion and open QA as
Okay.
as an issue. So Zen, I think, added it because I didn't have permission to. So it's 4181.
Yeah, it says here that he opened this 5 hours ago and looks like he wants feedback on it. It's a little bit too, it looks like he was asking specifically for my feedback, but it's a little bit too much for me to just do it during the meeting. So I'll just say, okay, I will provide feedback.
The importance of it is that it's blocking the other issue that he's working on, which is allowing forward revisions for Backdrop, which is a good candidate as well.
Oh, interesting. Like creating a revision without publishing it.
Yes.
I was just
this
going to
is-
mention, that's 1475, isn't it? I was just going to mention that.
Yes. And it's also mentioned in 4181. So the first thing that he says, I think one of the first things is that this is a blocker for me for this other issue. Yeah.
If people haven't looked at 1475 yet, they should. It's a really
Yes.
nice pull request.
It is. It is.
Oh my goodness, so many things.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, it's this issue. That's funny. I love it when it's an issue that's been stuck in a quagmire and then something amazing comes along that like solves everything. So 1475 being one of those ones that's like has been going through several iterations of discussion. Okay, these are all great. There's another general discussion, and I'm fine just moving right into that about reopening old issues or creating new ones as follow-ups.
Yes. So this is sort of like to make a decision on a policy, and I'm inclined to say I agree with Zen, unless the issue has been like closed yesterday and we found that there's a bug, we can reopen it. But otherwise, I prefer keeping the milestones and then filing a follow-up and mentioning the previous ticket there. So if we found out that something was amiss with something that we committed, I prefer a separate issue as a follow-up.
That makes sense. I just had a,
I think there's a lot of cases where we have an issue that was closed that wasn't resolved. And I think in those cases, it's totally fine to reopen them. But if it has a commit in the past that's already been released, we need to open a new issue and reference the old one.
sure.
Yeah.
But I just have a question about that, which is, can anybody do that? Or is,
You're
Got a
supposed to
permission?
be able to. We have a bot that's supposed to grant anyone who adds a comment to any issue permission to do everything, but it's not working. So if you find someone who doesn't have access to it, it just means that they're not the correct level of access on the repository and they should be added.
At least once a week, I monitor every even closed issues if they have new comments. So it's most likely that I will catch that.
Speaking of the bot that's not working, I'm sorry if I'm gonna go take us down a rabbit hole. Jen mentioned to me this past week about GitHub Actions, a new feature that they currently have in beta that allows you to respond to API events in an automated fashion and trigger any other API actions. It's basically, if you would imagine, like rules for GitHub. That could be an interesting thing to allow us to do automation like this, hopefully, without needing to have any maintenance overhead of running our own service on some server that, goes, that we don't know how to maintain, or that restarts or kills itself and only one person knows how to use it. That could be something that's might be able to fill this need of automatically granting permissions.
So, speaking of automation, there was another thing that was mentioned on Gitter, I think, automatically closing all the issues that are inactive. And I think that Jen mentioned that so long as it doesn't close, we have a way to exclude things by a label, that will be okay. It's just that I know that I work in support, so I know that having big issue queues is annoying and cumbersome, but I don't want to see issues being closed, because if like we give the wrong message to the people that has opened the ticket, and after, I don't know, 1 year or two, we haven't solved it and we dismiss it. We're being dismissive and we're closing it automatically as well. A bot does that. I don't want us to be that kind of community.
Yeah.
I prefer tickets to linger on, and then someone like myself or Peter, BW Panda, goes and just digs through the queue in reverse order.
Yeah.
And yeah, I prefer that. It's a more human, sort of like friendly, user-friendly way to deal with things. I consider the queue as a to-do list, and it's good to have to-do lists, no
Yeah.
matter if some items linger on for like even years.
I agree. I think issues should remain open until they are either resolved or it's determined that they will not be resolved.
Exactly.
But pull requests, if they get really old, I might be okay with those getting closed because they're going to need to be rebased anyway. And it's not like, do pull requests that get closed, do the branches get deleted?
There's an option for you to delete them if you are the person. So I'm not sure how it works for admins, but if it's on your own pull request and you close it, it gives you an option to delete because it deletes the branch on your fork.
Yeah.
So yes.
I wouldn't want to lose code that somebody had already
Exactly.
written a long time ago. So maybe as long as we can make sure the branches don't get deleted if the pull requests are closed automatically, we could close those if that becomes an issue.
Yeah.
I'm sympathetic to all these arguments, but the discussion on this thing, it sounds like there's a lot of flexibility. So I think most of the concerns we're raising could be addressed. I'm not sure how important it is, but like, it doesn't have to close the issue. It could just mark them as stale. I'm assuming that there might also be an option to, when it's closed, actually post a note saying, listen, we don't mean to dismiss this issue, but there hasn't been any activity. Please feel free to reopen it, right? I think there are ways to address all those. Again,
Yeah.
I'm not saying this is important, but
Right. What is this coming from, that there were too many issues in the queue problem?
I think it was triggered because PW Panda went through and was closing a bunch of issues, and somebody else just said, yeah, we could automate this so he doesn't have to spend the time doing it. And I think he does it, and I've done it too, just because sometimes it's nice to see the number go down.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of issues that were like a question that was asked 4 years ago and was answered and just never got closed.
Yeah.
So a lot of the stuff that he's closing he's not closing.
Yeah. I do think that, I'm not sure I would want that automated though, because I think having the human be like, oh yes, this has been taken care of, or no, it hasn't. Like sometimes a comment added doesn't mean the question's answered, sort of thing. But yeah, I agree. I like seeing issues get closed too, but preferably if they've already been resolved and not just because they're old.
Yeah. And in the grand scheme of things, like we have almost 2,000 tickets open, and over the past 3 or 4 months, we might have closed 30 of them that way. So yeah, I don't see any big profit by automating that. There is profit. I'm not dismissing it, but yeah, we need to consider the human factor as well.
I do think this is something we should continue to revisit though, because as GitHub does add more features, we should continue to be like, can we benefit from these? Is it going to make our lives easier?
We can say that so long. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just going to say, just for anyone listening to this issue that we're referring to is 4172. It has an issue that people are discussing currently. So yeah.
I would propose maybe a moderate option would be to just automatically tag issues as old or something, as stale, right? But they're still open, and that way somebody like Peter could just click on that tag and more easily. I know it's still, you can just do it. There are other ways of doing this filter, but if there were a tag that said, hey, this issue is 2 years old and still open, that might make it easier for people to go back and review them.
We used to have a tag for status outdated, but I don't see it. Someone might have removed it.
I don't think we had any issues that were using it.
Did you?
So I also have an issue with having too many labels is also problematic for new people. But I do like this idea of having something easy for someone to click on. Maybe this is something we can put on our how to use the core issue queue page, where we can build this link by adding those filters and then put that link and be like, hey, want to help us close old issues? Here's a link. And so I think the more of those things, if we already have tools to build that list with the current tags or sort or whatever, let's make those links for people and make it so that there is something easy for people to click on. So I like that idea.
Okay, makes sense.
And as I said, if we have a way to exclude tickets from being, because I had this problem with certain issues that got de-milestoned, and then they got forgotten, and they're like hidden gems. Like I go back to them and go, oh, this should have been done earlier, and it's now lost in the warp of like too many issues. So this is what I'm trying to avoid: closing issues that are legitimate ones by a robot.
Yeah.
And I'm just telling you now, I watched the queue anyway, so if the robot closed it, I would just go and reopen it. It's a waste of my time.
Reopening
Yeah,
this issue.
yeah. Let's fight robot. I'm a better robot than you.
I don't want you to have to be a robot. You're a better human than a robot.
Yeah, I know.
Okay. Where are we here?
I want to rewind. I heard Joseph start to say something right at the tail end of the 115 commentary. I'm not sure if we already covered what you were going to talk about, or if you still have it in your mind. Joseph, do you have it?
I was wondering if I can just add issues to milestones, like especially if I already put a pull request on it.
Yeah, if it's a bug fix issue and it has a pull request, it can be added to the bug fix milestone. And even if you added the pull request, that's totally fine. You are allowed to add it to the milestone. The only one that needs verification is if the issue doesn't have a pull request, but you think it's super important, you could add milestone candidate label, and then someone else would have to add it to the milestone. But if it has a pull request, anyone can add it to the milestone, including the person who added the pull request.
So if you want to add a milestone to it, you can add the milestone candidate tag and then let Gitter know, like post on Gitter that, hey guys, I think this is a bug milestone candidate. If anyone agrees, because that's the process actually. Someone tags it as with a label, and then if a second person agrees, they can milestone it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah.
Yeah, it was.
It doesn't have a pull request.
I don't think these qualify as bug fixes, but I wanted to put them like in the 115 milestone, just because they keep.
Are they?
So for that milestone, we need an advocate as well. So unless, yeah. For one
What are
second.
they?
3458, which is making the. So there's a message in every theme about that it supports color module if the color module is disabled, and so that Gregory brought up that we should like make that better and actually make it an info message and stuff.
Yep.
So
anything that's tagged with UX, you can put in a bug fix milestone.
Okay, and then
Which ticket was that? What number?
3458.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the other one is 3348, which is adding sub-theming support to the color module. So you can like either add new files and have your base themes color settings apply to it if you use the same colors, or you can add new settings to an existing theme that has colors, and then it'll like array merge them and then modify all the files.
Sorry, I got distracted again. Can you please repeat the ticket number? I was still stuck in the other one.
The first one or the second one?
That one, the one.
3348.
Thanks. Oh, yes. Yes.
Yeah, and I actually don't know how anybody would test that other than making a theme that is a base theme of one of the ones in core.
Yeah, you won't be able to test it on the actual PR sandbox, yeah. But I agree with the milestone. I'll set the milestone.
Yeah, cool.
These have pull requests though. Oh yeah, so that's another good thing. Like if you aren't sure about a particular issue, you can always fall back to using milestone candidate and getting a second person to agree. So it's a good.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Anything else you guys would like to add or discuss today?
issue I'd like to bring up, and it's along the same lines where it's got a pull request. So maybe if someone agrees that it's a milestone one, they can do that. It came about as a result of me writing tests for the Backdrop console contrib module to test multi-site support, and I realized that the Backdrop cores install script, like install.sh, doesn't support multi-sites. So there's an issue I've created for that with a pull request, which is issue 4151. So I just need someone to test and review that for me. So if we can get that into core, then I can get the test working for the contrib module.
Okay, awesome. All right. Well, let's wrap up for today. We're well past the normal ending time. So thank you guys all for being here today, and we'll see you guys on the internet. Thanks again. And thanks everybody out there for watching.
Thanks. Bye, guys.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.